Welcome back to another installment of Ask Eddie and Anne. Anne, how are you doing?
I'm actually doing really well, thank you.
Good. I am very glad to hear that. And I'm glad to report it's not as scorching hot in my office as it has been, so I shouldn't get too sweaty
That's
during the
good.
recording of this episode. Yes. So let's go.
Yeah,
It's going to be a little different episode. I have a feeling because
yeah,
I'm not so cheery right off the bat, And anyway, I think question one that you're about to has something to do with that. So
yeah. So this was our first email that we're doing tonight, and this is from Chuck. Hey, Eddie and Ann, like you, I was immensely saddened to hear of the death of Bill Arne. I spent a lot of time with him and Laurel, especially listening to Bill's warm and sarcastic view of life. It was a joy. Is there a chance that you could do a tribute to Bill at the next Ask Eddie? We could all use a smile at this sad, sad time.
and I know that's Chuck Tegsey, who was good buddies with Bill. Met him through the Noir City Festival. So for people who are watching who don't know who Bill is that we're referring to, it's Bill Arne, who was the voice of the Noir City Festival in San Francisco for a great number of years. I've kind of lost track of exactly how many years. My recollection is that Bill began as the announcer when the festival moved out of the Castro and went to the Palace of Fine Arts. I think that was in 2006, and I had met Bill in 2005. And so that would have been the first festival that he could have announced. And I definitely recall him being there. And also Laurel, who Chuck references, is Bill's wife, who that was their first date, was to the Noir City Festival at the Palace of Fine Arts. He brought her and said, "Hey, look at me. I'm a big shot. I'm the announcer at this festival." But it's been a bad week, and to be honest, Bill died, suddenly, although it was after a long illness. And I spoke to him the day before he died. And, he had been in and out of the hospital and had not gotten any confirmation of what was actually wrong with him. And then he passed away the very next day. So I'm just very sad. He is irreplaceable, and as you know, you knew Bill, and his presence at those festivals is just he made it something special. He didn't have to do a lot, but that voice was really a part of the show. So even Charlotte comes to pay her respects to,
I know that
to
got her
Mr.
after.
Arne. Yeah, yeah. So anyway, I know that you and Bill shared some nice times at the festival.
Yeah, we did. When he still smoked, we smoked cigarettes all the time outside of the Castro in between shows. And one time he had like a pint of bourbon that he bought across the street. And so we were actually drinking in front of the Castro.
It doesn't surprise me at all. That was Bill and I, hoisted a few over the years together. And of course, he's also notable for many things. But for fans of film noir and crime fiction and everything, Bill's there's a little legend about him because he lived in Dashiell Hammett's apartment in San Francisco at 891 Post Street, and held the fort there for a number of years. And then when he and Laurel hooked up, let's just say that apartment is not conducive to marriage. It's very small, and while it was perfect for a bachelor, not so much for a married man. And so Bill had to give up the apartment, but we conspired to get my buddy Robert Mailer Anderson to take over the lease on the apartment. And Robert, being a man of means, not only took over the lease, but he actually financed the restoration of the apartment back to its original state, like it was in 1929 when Hammett was last living there. I think he left in September of 29 to go back to New York, and so Robert was cool enough to see, because Bill had worked many years trying to do just that. To take off the decades and decades of paint that was on everything and try to return the place to its original state, because it did have all of the original fixtures, all the bathroom fixtures, everything but the kitchen cabinets and such were original. So it was really cool to go in that apartment and read the Maltese Falcon in the room, or for that matter, the Dane Curse or Red Harvest. Were all written in that apartment, but the Maltese Falcon was special because it became readily apparent when you're reading the book, that this was Sam Spade's apartment.
Yeah.
And anyway, it's extremely sad, for me, because just we'll go on with the festival, fingers crossed, but it will not be the same without Bill. So
it's a big loss. I mean, just not just personally, but that was such a hallmark of the festival and such a special, part of it that we had here in San Francisco that we, didn't have at the, I'm sorry, at the other festivals.
I know. No, it was one of the things that made San Francisco unique, and Bill was such a unique guy, so old school. And it was very much, I had a very rough few days after learning this. And one of the reasons was because when I was growing up, I really admired my dad and looked up to him. And I was so fascinated by all of his cronies. And Bill was like one of those guys. He really reminded me of somebody that would have been pals with my dad in the 40s, and the voice and the whole thing, and and Bill was a character, I mean, to look at him, it was like, this guy should be in the movies. I mean, you could just see him. In fact, when we shot a little video to promote one of the festivals, I got Bill in it to play the bartender because it was just, he's like just perfect for that. So anyway, very sad about that, but we will go on because that's exactly what Bill would expect. So, and I expect there will be further tributes when Noir City gets back up and running.
And you wrote a really nice piece about him, which we put on the website, just for people that knew Bill from the festival, or personally, or people who hadn't experienced a festival here. It's just it's a way to know him. And
yes,
and I particularly, we had different photos of Bill, and I took the one that you had posted of the two of you that I think is just, it made me really, it's just so sweet, the two of you together. And I'm pretty sure that must have been after the whole party in the 10th year, I think.
Well, that was actually, that's funny. That picture was taken on the set of Bill's TV show.
Oh,
he did Cheese Theater that he was the host of, and he roped me into some really goofy intros for that. And if you look closely at that photograph, you'll see that we're handcuffed together.
I didn't notice that.
And that's kind of fitting in a way. That's sort of how close we were, to be handcuffed together. But Dennis Hearn took some beautiful pictures of Bill over the years. He's sort of become the official, documentarian of the festival. And Dennis posted those on Facebook as well. So, in addition to the stuff that we posted, there's there's nice visual tribute to Bill as well.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't want to get any sadder than I already am. So
Okay.
maybe we should
Maybe we
move
should
on
move
with
on.
the questions. Yeah, sorry folks,
Yeah.
but that was necessary. And thanks, Chuck, for sending
Yeah.
that, as though we weren't going to do that anyway. But thanks, Chuck, for the nudge.
Mm.
Okay, so here's the question: how is Dark City: The Lost World of Film Noir different from the classic original Dark City: The Lost World of Film Noir paperback? And I like this. Dennis in Hillsborough, North Carolina, puts a date on the original of May 15th, 1998, which I'm proud to say I bought back before the millennium. Okay, Dennis, I wonder if Dennis is asking, why should I buy the new one if I own the original?
I think that's what the question is.
Because it's better. There's more words and more pictures. No, seriously, there were, the difference is, it's a hardcover. And it's a hardcover that's not that more expensive than the original softcover. And Running Press, the publisher, did an absolutely spectacular job producing this book. The photos are absolutely stunning, and they're different. I chose different. Not everything is different, but I chose a lot of different photographs for this edition. And originally, I had wanted to write 3 additional chapters for the original book, but it got unwieldy, and the publisher just said, no, this is what you've got is enough. Leave out those 3 chapters. So those are now in there. They were not written for the original book, but I was able to write them for this. And then every chapter has more material, and some of the material is just moved around to accommodate things thematically. Like I wrote about brute force in the original book, but it didn't have a home because I wanted to do a whole chapter just on prison noir, but that was one of the chapters that got cut. And so I just pulled out the stuff I had written about brute force because I couldn't imagine not including it in the original book. But now I've built a whole chapter around that with all sorts of other movies as well. So, I mean, it's just a very, very handsome production. I'm so gratified that the publisher saw enough in the book to do it right. And of course, it's done in collaboration with Turner Classic Movies. They have an imprint at Running Press. So it says, TCM as a logo on the book. But it's the only TCM book like this that is shaped like this or constructed like this. And I'm so happy that Running Press allowed me to not conform to the house style, because I said, the way the book is designed and that landscape format as opposed to portrait format was very, very important to me to make the book play the way it does. So I hope, Dennis, I've convinced you to buy the new edition as well.
Yeah, I mean, it really is beautiful. Like, I was really happy when I got my copy. It was just, this is really gorgeous, so they did a really beautiful job on the layout, and the production on it's really gorgeous.
Yeah, it's fantastic. Josh McDonald was the art director, and he did a beautiful, beautiful job.
So this is 2 from Jeff in Brooklyn. The first one: during my research on one of many films that are discussed, I came across a term called Filmgree. Basically, it's a subplot in film noir that deals with communist conspiracy. So what is your opinion of Filmgree? Is it authentic or one of many fads?
Interesting question. I think that Filmgree, which is gray, right? So film noir is film black and Filmgree is film gray. I believe, I could be wrong about this, but I think there was a guy named Tom Anderson who wrote a book about, communist conspiracies are perceived or legitimate in Hollywood. And I think he's the one that coined that term. And that he was basically saying that there's a strain of film noir, that's sort of what it's about. Very, very left wing. Okay, so all of that is in like Dark City in my book, but I just don't call it Filmgree because I don't see the point of labeling. People argue enough about the film noir label to put another label when what you're really doing is talking about a particular a group of filmmakers who had that approach to crime movies. And we're talking about Jules Dassin and Joseph Losey, perhaps Nicholas Ray, certainly Abraham Polanski, Robert Rawson, Buzz Bezarides, somewhat John Huston, but that's kind of it. And I don't, it's definitely something that was part of the film noir movement. So when in my book, when I say, sometimes these films were distress flares, shot off by artists working the night shift at the Dream Factory. But then other films are just firecrackers and they're just meant to be playful and diverting and all that. So I think the suggestion here is that Filmgree is the more politically serious examples of film noir. So I mean, yes, it's totally valid because that's what those artists were producing. Is it worth a whole other designation and a category as a subset of noir? I'm unconvinced, but so be it.
And this is the second one from Jeff. Does the foundation restore movies that are in public domain? If so, does the foundation legally own the copyright of the restored film?
Yes to both of those. Yes, we will look for films that are in the public domain because it makes it makes it much increases the possibility of us being able to put the film out in a Blu-ray and DVD edition with our pals at Flickr Alley if we don't have to go through paying a huge licensing fee to do that with the owner of the film. But yes, we definitely own the restoration, which is, since the film is in the public domain, but the restoration is not. So that is why if somebody uploads Too Late for Tears, our restoration of Too Late for Tears, if they upload that to YouTube, we will take it down. Yeah. Because we paid a lot of money to restore that film. Yeah. And while I'm all for access and all that kind of stuff, it's also like, come on, give us a chance here, to make our money back, which will never happen.
Yeah.
It's just a little secret that, people think, oh, they're making money and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, there is no way through sales of Blu-rays and such that we will ever make back the cost of restoring one of these films. It's not possible. You'd have to be producing, a superhero movie to make that kind of money back. But so it's not going to happen. But we try to, we try to corral the reproduction of the film and the streaming of the film just because.
Yeah. Well, we restore these films so people can see them.
Yes, and all that is well and good. We would much prefer that they support our efforts in that regard by buying the Blu-ray of the film rather than just streaming it online for free. And there are places you can go where it's legitimate. Like our films are on Canopy.
They are on Canopy.
Right. And Flickr Alley has made a deal with Canopy to show those films. So there was a legitimate business agreement worked out there. And then if you have a library card, you can watch it on Canopy. Right. And I'm perfectly cool with that. But, other sources, not as much.
Okay,
Okay, so my turn now.
so
Is there any chance of a restoration of DOA? And what do you think of the remake, providing you've seen it, of course? That's from our friend Martin in the Netherlands. Anne, have you seen the remake of DOA?
no, I have not.
With Dennis Quaid, and
Yeah.
I believe Meg Ryan is in that as well.
Yeah, it's Meg Ryan, I believe, yeah.
And the fact that I don't remember if Meg Ryan is in it shows you how much that film has lodged itself in my memory.
Yeah.
I recall not liking the remake because it was too flashy and too noisy, and and it just didn't have the same feel as the same sweaty, insane feel as the Edmund O'Brien version. And as for a chance of a restoration, I don't know. I don't want to go into that too deeply because for various reasons, but my eye has always been on it, but there are reasons why it has not been a project worth pursuing. So I'll leave it at that.
This is from Mark from Washington, D.C. I hope you're coming to North City, D.C. Have you considered putting together a film noir database that would group film noir by commonalities and allow users to rate each film and keep track of which films they have seen?
No.
No.
should we do that? I mean, first off, I'm not sure what he means by group films by commonality. I mean, it would be like, is there a femme fatale or not? I mean, it's so funny because I can see a film database, right? Like TCM or IMDb, they have databases, and you go, it's a comedy with this or that. With film noir, it's like, it's a crime movie, right? And maybe you'd want to know, like, something else about it, but I don't know what that would be. Like, is it set in a big city? I don't know. I don't know what those quantifiers or qualifiers would be. And as for keeping track of what they have and haven't seen, I mean, I don't do that. And I'm the head of the Film Noir Foundation, I mean, I just remember if I've seen it. It always is funny to me when people say, this is particularly true with the Noir City festivals or my show on TCM, where people say, like 15 minutes into the film, oh, I've seen this before. Like they didn't remember that they had seen it, Are you like that? Do you forget that you've seen a film? I sure don't.
No, I really don't. It's very unusual for me to do that. Even though for some reason, when I went to see Michael Mann's Thief in the theater, because someone was doing a nearly noir series and it was part of it. And I could have sworn I'd seen that movie, and it started, and it's like, I never saw this. This is really great. So it was like a nice surprise.
Yeah, well, that's
I have no idea why I thought I had seen that film. I must have gotten it mixed up in my head with something else of his, but it was great.
It's funny. I mean, I'm being kind of funny here, but if you don't remember if you've seen a film or not, I might suggest you're seeing too many films.
Yeah, could
be. It's a possibility, right? Because I remember if I've seen a film, even if it's something, that isn't noir or anything, I'll see a movie for 3 seconds on TV going by, and I know what that is and whether or not I've seen it. Yeah. If I don't recognize it, then it's like, oh, here's one I haven't seen. So I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not totally against the idea of a database, but I'm just not sure what it would accomplish. I mean, on our Noir City website, we have a list that you have to look for a little bit. That's every movie we've shown at the Noir City festivals, right? And in many ways, you could use that as a list of noir titles. We haven't shown everything. Yeah. I mean, there are some films that are just even like, am I really going to show this? I mean, people are not going to really enjoy this movie. Why am I going to show it? And it's interesting that there are films that you can show on TV, and it always surprises me how much people love them.
Yeah.
I just showed this movie Hellbound on Noir Alley, and the audience, the overwhelming reaction was people loved it. And I was like, oh man, this is a dicey one, because it's really not a great film. But there are movies that you can show in a movie theater on a certain night, and they're going to play. They're going to play really well and probably get a better reaction than they deserve.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I always liked it when we did Bad Girls Night.
Oh yeah.
And that was just, and the audience was just there for it. They were just,
they are primed. They are primed for it. Yeah.
Yeah.
But we're showing films that if they were on, at 3:00 in the afternoon and you're just flipping around and you're by yourself, it's like, am I really going to spend 90 minutes watching this piece of trash? But then you show it in a crowded movie theater, and it can play like gangbusters. Wicked Woman plays like crazy in a movie theaters. People love it.
Well, it's so much fun.
Yeah. So I don't know how we got off on that from this database question, but
I know we kind of wandered off the point.
and then I'm wondering if Mark W. from Washington D.C., if he does this kind of work. Is he volunteering to do this? I don't know. I can just imagine all the arguments that people would have over what's a viable category to qualify noir, and I just don't approach this stuff like that. It's like I'm a baseball fan, but I'm not into the numbers part of it.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't care about OPS and WAR and all these statistical things. It's like, this guy can play. Yeah. That's it for me. So I feel kind of the same way about the films. It's me now, I think. Yes. Hi, a question for Anne. You said at the last installment that your favorite noir is The Unfaithful. I watched it on TCM and found the post-war story from a woman's point of view rather than the veterans interesting, especially the legal arguments about why Anne Sheridan should be judged innocent for being unfaithful. But, says Tina, I am curious why this is your favorite noir.
This is not my favorite film noir. What I actually said was, this is my favorite film about adultery.
Oh, okay.
Which I know is a very specific thing, but it's my favorite film about adultery because I feel that it's very compassionate, and that it's also it's complicated, and things aren't black and white, and the characters aren't black and white, and also it's sort of an interesting insight because I'm assuming that there was a lot of wartime infidelity in America at that point in time, and people were having to cope with it. So yeah, that's actually what I said about the film.
Okay.
Because my favorite, really my favorite film noir is probably The Maltese Falcon, because that's really my favorite movie of all time. Just kind of like, and just like I kind of realized it when I saw it yet again in a theater, and I realized, I think this is actually my favorite film because
there is adultery in that too.
And there's adultery in that too.
Yes. So maybe that's one of the categories in the database.
We can have adultery noir.
Adultery. Is there adultery in this movie,
There's a lot of it in film
noir. There is a lot of it in film noir. So who knows? By the time we're finished with this episode, we may have built this database. Okay, your turn.
Okay, and this is from Dennis. I was wondering what you thought of the 1997 David Fincher film, The Game. I rewatched this recently for the first time in years and forgotten it had a noirish vibe. Not a movie that seems to get discussed or aired much these days. I personally liked it. I thought Michael Douglas and Sean Penn were great.
All of those observations are spot on. It is like, I don't know, is it the forgotten David Fincher film? Maybe. I mean, even though, two big stars in it, and it is set largely in San Francisco. And I like David Fincher. I like David Fincher as a director. I find him, very, very inventive and very creative. Nobody handles exposition in a movie better than David Fincher. But I was not crazy about this screenplay. It's a gimmicky movie. By and large, I don't like gimmicky movies that are like playing with your emotions, and then at the end, I don't want to give anything away if people haven't seen it. It's certainly a film worth watching, you can see that David Fincher, why he wanted to direct this movie, because there's so many locations, there's so much sleight of hand in the way the movie is made because it's a very tricky story. But you know, I don't know. I'm not going to go out of my way to see it again. Let me put it that way. There are other Fincher movies like Zodiac that I will watch endlessly, but you know, it is interesting how some films just slip away while others become cult classics, and I don't always understand why that happens, but I think the Game might be one of those.
I don't know, because the thing about the Game was it was just always, back when I worked in a video store, which was for like 20 years. It was one of those things, it rented regularly though.
What?
You know, it rented regularly. It was just one of those films that always, you know, somebody was always renting it.
Yeah. Well, because it's Michael Douglas and Sean Penn, and people are like, oh, they made a movie together?
Yeah.
Although they're barely ever in it together. But shit, now I'm thinking I might have to watch it again.
I've actually never seen it, because it's one of those films that it's one of my I'm going to get around to it films.
Yeah,
I know about those. It's just there in the background.
I know about those. Well, you would dig it because you've lived in San Francisco long enough now that you would recognize every place in it, right? They use some really good San Francisco locations.
Yeah, and I think now that I've been here for a while, it'll be fun.
Yeah. Okay, who's reading the next question?
Sorry, I'm having to take my earpiece because it's fritzing.
I know, that's why everybody must have figured out by now that we have these earpieces so that we're not intruding on each other's soundtrack, you know. So okay, so I think it's me.
It's you.
These are two questions from Brent. This first one's pretty funny. The double slap. I've noticed that Bogart and other noir protagonists used to do at both sides of the face double slap. Do you know if men used to use this double slap to start or stop fights in real life? If so, when did they stop? I wonder if it stopped being a thing because men learned hand-to-hand combat in World War II, or maybe because women in film started doing it. Okay, those are some pretty good leaps of you know, but I don't know. I have never seen a double slap in real life, right? I believe this is what is now known as the bitch slap.
Yeah,
I think that's you know, which it is done. The purpose, no question about it. The purpose is to not just stop something or get somebody's attention. The purpose is to humiliate the person being slapped, which is why, you know, you see Bogart slap Elijah Cook or, you know, Peter Lorre or somebody like that. It's clearly like a double slap. It's like, you know, and it's so fast that it's at times it's almost comical, you know, and it is great when you get a double slap from the women in movies. I mean, Ida Lupino does a great double slap in The Man I Love, you know, where she hits, I think it's Don McGuire or somebody, she just smacks him in the face. And I think, doesn't she also do that to Cornell Wilde in Roadhouse? I know when he's
trying to remember.
He's dropping her off, he's driven her back into town and tried to get her out of there. And he says something to her and she belts him and goes, silly boy. I think it's a double slap. I'll have to go back and watch it again. But it's just, it's one of those things that I think probably the first time it was ever used on film, it was so awesome that it just got picked up and people started doing it. Who knows? We might have to investigate this. Was Bogart the first one to use the double slap in a movie? I don't know.
Yeah. And I was going to say, one, cats do that. They
Good
do the
point.
double thing because Emily and Charlotte do that to each other every once in a while. And also, there's a movie. It was one of the it's Joan Crawford, but it's actually a Doris Day movie with Dennis Morgan and Dennis Morgan's buddy that was in like all the films with them. He was
now wait a second. Are you thinking of, who are you thinking of? Jack Carson or
Jack Carson?
Jack Carson.
So Jack Carson, and she overhears them talking, and she thinks that they're going to use, that they're being sleazy producers, and they use Doris Day for nefarious personal reasons. And so she double slaps both of them. It's like really hilarious. It's like you just see her knitting and she's getting madder and madder overhearing this conversation. And actually, if you go on YouTube, people take
you can see it. Okay, very good.
That's great.
Very, very good.
Wow.
I will definitely be looking for that. Okay, and the second question from Brent is it has to do with A and B movies. How do you identify a film noir, if a film noir was an A or a B, if you don't have a record of whether it played on the bottom half of a double bill? Were all movies under 90 minutes automatically put on the bottom half? No. Were all Poverty Row movies automatically put on the bottom half, even if they were around 90 minutes? No. And then lastly, he says, if so, would you consider Gun Crazy and Suspense to be B movies? Okay, the way you can tell if a movie, it takes a little research. The way you know a movie was a B or not is whether it was made by the B unit at the studio. I mean, if it's officially a B film, if it is produced by the B unit at the studio. So, and all the major studios had a B unit, and there would be producers who specialized in that stuff, right? So, anyway, Sid Rogel or somebody like that at RKO would be a producer of B pictures. The Pine Brothers were producers of B pictures. And then when you get into stuff like Gun Crazy and Suspense, those are Poverty Row films that were, I mean, Gun Crazy, for all intents and purposes, is a monogram film, but it started production with Monogram, and by the time it finally got made, Monogram had entered into a distribution deal with United Artists, and so it was a bit more than a B film. But Suspense was the most expensive movie Monogram had ever produced, and I mean, you can go online and see theater marquees and things where Suspense was playing, and that is certainly not a B movie.
Yeah.
I mean, they, and for that matter, neither was Dillinger, and neither was The Gangster. All of these were produced by the King brothers, who worked at Monogram, but they were determined to climb out of the B ghetto and to make these A pictures. So Gun Crazy was definitely, they always meant that to be an A picture. As a picture can still be an A movie and be like 87 minutes long or something. I mean, that's perfectly okay. It really just has to do with where it fits in the studio's scheme of things. So that's why these books that are so handy that I have, that were all the histories of each studio, the Columbia story, the MGM story, all that, those come in really handy because it's a quick way to find out whether the movie was made as a B or an A picture, because it just tells you, this was the budget, it was produced in the B unit, and blah blah blah. So that's really how you can tell. And it doesn't, there are A pictures that end up being B pictures in re-release. So you can never assume, looking at like an old newspaper where you see a double bill and you'd see Playing With, and it would, I don't know what, it'd say like Cry of the City. Well, Cry of the City was not a B picture, it was an A picture, but it could very well have ended up on the bottom half of a double bill a few years later.
Sorry, that was really interesting.
No,
I mean,
okay.
I'm not sorry that was interesting. I mean, that was what that pause was that was really interesting.
I know, and usually I say, and that's enough of that. I didn't do it that time, so yeah.
I needed to snap out of it a little faster. Okay, this one's from Dan. More than once, I've started watching a noir new to me that I hadn't seen, only to discover that the only thing new to me is the film's new name. The latest was Killer Bait, 1955, which was actually Too Late for Tears, 1949. Why was this done? Was it to fool people into thinking it was a new movie, or was it that they thought that the original title was not so good? P.S. I watched the movie anyway and enjoyed it.
Well, the answer to that question, Dan, is that all movies, Too Late for Tears was an independently made film by Hunt Stromberg, and he had a distribution deal with United Artists. So UA released the film. I'm sure they also probably put up the money to complete the film. And that distribution deal only lasts for a certain number of years, right? And so in order to make their money back, if they haven't done it, or to squeeze the last few dollars out of it, they will reissue the movie through a new distributor. I believe that Astor Pictures or something like that became the second distributor of Too Late for Tears. And yes, they will rename the movie. I don't want to say to trick people, although I guess that is what it represents. They just want you to think it's a fresh film. This was a technique pioneered by these guys called the 40 Thieves, that were sexploitation filmmakers in the 20s and 30s, where they would buy a movie, they would cut in like nude shots, and then they'd take it out and play it town to town, and then they'd come back the next year and it's the same movie with a different title. So that was, it's a time-honored tradition in the business. It's interesting. I wonder if Dan has discovered any other ones, because I know there are some noir films that have been reissued under different titles. That one is the most famous one, because, and it's interesting Dan brings that up, because when we restored Too Late for Tears, one of the source elements that we found was the reissue version, which was under the title Killer Bait. And in fact, if you own the Blu-ray, you people already know this if you watch the special features. We never found a copy of Too Late for Tears that had the original title Too Late for Tears intact. So we actually had to digitally recreate the title sequence, because we did not want to call it Killer Bait. We had the Killer Bait title sequence, but we did not have the Too Late for Tears one. And so the whole thing had to be digitally redone, and it was done very, very artfully. Nobody can tell, but we've looked at it when it was being done. I looked at it at every step of the way, and it was really fascinating to see how complicated it was. That was one of the biggest expenses restoring that film, was recreating that title sequence, recreating the font. And then when you do it all digitally, then you have to kind of de-enhance it so that it looks more like 35 millimeter. Pardon me, looks more like 35 millimeter film. Anyway, there, you got more than you bargained for with that one, Dan. That was a complicated answer.
Okay, your turn.
Okay, and this question is for Eddie and Ann. Have either of you walked up the Filbert Street steps, retracing where Bogart walked up, or kind of crawled up, to Bacall's apartment and Dark Passage? The building is still there.
Yes, it is.
And yes, and I don't know who sent this question in. I don't see a name.
Alan.
Oh, Alan. Oh yeah, Alan. I see Alan from San Anselmo. And he had duly noted that the person who had the apartment put a poster of Bogart, or a big cutout, life-size cutout of Bogart in the window. Yes, the thing that is totally different, however, and this used to be part of the Noir tour that I would give in San Francisco, which I might never do again, because of that very area, that intersection
No,
of what was it, Grant and Union, I think it was, is not conducive to buses.
no, it is not. It's a
No, it
very,
is not.
yeah.
And we took a bus up there with it didn't have an easy time turning around, so that was a big mistake. But there, if you watch Dark Passage, there's like almost no foliage in the median on that street,
Yeah.
and there's probably like a little sapling, just across the street from the apartment, and that's now a huge tree. It is a huge tree in the middle of the street,
Yeah.
so big that, have you seen this? That they have the crutch. They built a big crutch to hold up one of the branches of the tree, and the crutch is like out, like partially in the street, to hold up the branch, because they said, oh no, the tree is a landmark. We
Yeah.
don't want to cut off the branch. It's been growing for 50, 60 years, So they propped it up, which is very odd. Parking is tough enough on that street, but now
Yeah.
one of those parking spaces is occupied by a tree crutch.
Yeah, and I actually, when I've been there, like we actually walked it, because I think we had taken a bus up part of the way and then walked up there, which makes it a lot easier. But it's a beautiful building. I mean, it really is. And then
The Monadnock building, I think it's called, the Monadnock building.
you're right. Yeah, it's a great location.
And yes, the question was, have we walked up those steps? And the answer was yes, when I was much, much younger. I am not doing that again.
I did not. We just went, went around. I didn't walk up the stairs. Yeah, and I just wanted to do another kind of little shout out. I used to get my taxes done at the Flood Building, where Pinkerton's was headquartered when Dashiell Hammett worked there, and the kind of the back of the building is on. You can see really well from Powell Street, and someone actually had painted one of the windows with Spade and Archer.
Oh, perfect.
Yeah, and it just would make me happy every time I just kind of look up there. That's so cool. I can't believe someone did that, but I guess someone was a fan.
Absolutely. And it's funny how accurate seems very accurate in the movie, that when Spade is sitting in his office in the beginning of the film and you see the Bay Bridge out the window, it kind of feels accurate. Like if he was on the south side of the building, that would probably be the view. Anyway, okay, I think it is your turn now.
Okay. This is from Michael in Post Falls, Idaho. I'm currently reading and really enjoying Dashiell Hammett's Lost Stories, 21 Hammett short stories previously uncollected in book form. Since he's a Hammett aficionado, has Eddie ever read this book? Vince Emery, the editor, is from San Francisco. Does Eddie know him?
Yes to all of the above. I have read the 21 Lost Stories. I do know Vince. I met Vince probably the same day I met Bill Arne. Vince was sort of there's a lot of Hammett scholars that I know. Vince is one of them, and Don Herron is certainly one of them, and Rick Lehman is another, and of course Julie Rivette, who is Hammett's granddaughter, is probably the preeminent Hammett scholar, if you will. And yes, Vince did a great job. putting all those books together, and he's a really great guy. I haven't seen him in a while. I'm not sure if he's still living in San Francisco. I know that a few years back he was cleaning things out, and he gave me a bunch of Hammett memorabilia and stuff that he had collected because he was just trying to unclutter his life, shall we say. And I also recommend The Hunter and Other Stories, which was another collection of previously unpublished Hammett short stories that Julie and Rick Lehman put out a few years ago, and I really loved that book because it wasn't detective fiction, and it was kind of the missing link, because you saw that Hammett wanted to branch out and write other types of fiction, and publishers didn't always go for it because the name was now synonymous with detective fiction, and if it didn't play by the rules, they weren't interested. So these stories went unpublished, and to me, they're some of the best stories of his that I've ever read. So I highly recommend that book, The Hunter and Other Stories.
That's your turn. Yeah.
Indeed it is. Please answer this. What noirs, classic, foreign, or neo, are the best ones about con jobs, stings, or con artists? That's from Brian in Toronto. Anne, do you have any favorites in that regard?
Well, Nightmare Alley for con artists, of course. I don't know. Well, Asphalt Jungle for, I guess that's, is he counting heist in this?
No,
No. Con job, stings, or con artist.
Yeah.
The Grifters.
Yeah, The Grifters is a great one. Yeah.
Which I think is probably, I mean, I love that. I love that movie so much.
Yes.
It's just amazing in it. So those are my two picks.
Okay. I will, a film that came out a little after Nightmare Alley that I'm very fond of is The Spiritualist.
I love
with
that
Turhan Bey. And he's a con man, a phony spiritualist, and that's shot by John Alton. That is a really, really good film.
Yeah.
And it's funny that you initially said The Asphalt Jungle, because when I was doing my big program of heist movies,
yeah,
you know, there's a big difference between a heist film and a con film.
Yeah.
You know, two totally different things. I also like, I like the Mamet films. House of Games and The Spanish Prisoner are both really good. And then, of course, Mamet did a picture called Heist. And so it shows exactly the difference. If you watch The Spanish Prisoner and then you watch Heist, you'll see David Mamet completely understands the difference between these two types of story. But perhaps my all-time favorite con man movie is this picture from Argentina called Nine Queens,
such a great movie.
Ricardo Darín, and it's the first film by the great Fabian Belinsky, who only made two, Nine Queens and The Aura, and Darín is the star of both of them, and they're both spectacular. But I'm telling you, Nine Queens is, you know, that's like one of the best first films I've ever seen. It is so incredibly inventive, and come on, Darín is just the greatest. His con man he plays in that movie is so charismatic, and I'm trying to remember the actor, Gabriel. It's slipping my mind. Who plays his young cohort that he takes under his wing to like teach him the grift. He's also terrific in that movie. I love that film. So those are mine. Those are my picks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Me. This is from Marjorie in Connecticut. I'm still dying to know about the headless mannequin in Eddie's office. Is it wearing a costume from a Noir film? There she is.
She's not headless. And I hope she didn't hear that, because she'll take great offense at the notion that she's headless. I mean, Doll's got just a beautiful face, although she's got a little cut in her upper lip there that kind of adds to the appeal, quite honestly. And no, the costume is not from a film noir. It's from my wife's closet. Well, no, she's wearing actually a shirt that's mine. She's wearing my wife's leopard skin capri pants, and that's my dad's old fedora that she's wearing. So there you go, Marjorie. You're dying to know about her. There she is. She's right there, and she's the quiet type, though. I discovered Doll one day driving through downtown Oakland. There was a department store that had gone out of business, and she was just sitting in the window, naked and forlorn. And I said, "Wow, that's weird. I think I'll go ask them how much they want for that mannequin." And that was it. I gave them a few bucks, and she lives here now. She's part of the family.
Sorry, it just keeps making, every time I see her, there's an episode of Kolchak the Night Stalker, for those of you who are older, like me, and it was sort of a Monster of the Week show with Darren McGavin.
I love that show.
Greatest shows of all time. But there's one with witchcraft, and at the end of it, he gets trapped in this room with all these mannequins, and the mannequins come to life and start going after him, which actually did give me a nightmare, because I was very young when I watched that.
We one time had friends staying here, and they had a young son, and he couldn't sleep upstairs because of her.
Yeah.
It just creeped him out. He couldn't go to sleep because he was so certain she was going to come to life and do what, I'm not exactly sure, but yeah. So we don't have young boys stay here anymore.
That solved that problem.
Yeah, she stays. The young boys go. Okay, here we go. The use of humor in film noir is in some ways antithetical, it might seem, for such a serious genre. However, humor is an important everyday defense for people when dealing with serious, even life-threatening issues. Agreed. Many characters in noir use a modern sense of humor to deal with situations that are overwhelming if you take them too seriously. Robert Mitchum was particularly good in that way, and Billy Wilder was a master of the use of fatalistic humor. A modern master of the use of humor in noir is John Dahl. That's a good call. What are your thoughts about the issue of humor in noir? And this is John in Brooklyn, New York. Anne, any notions about humor in noir?
Oh, well, I mean, it's one of my favorites. I mean, that's one of the things I really like about the genre. Like, just, California is great if you're a grapefruit, which is still one of my all-time favorite lines. And I just remember when I was back covering, I used to live in Seattle, and I'd come down here and cover the Noir Festival. Like, one of my days coverage, I just entitled it, "Why is everyone so sarcastic?" And for me, that's just such a pleasure of the genre. And I think that's also one of the reasons why I love the Maltese Falcon so much, is Sam Spade is such a goddamn smartass. And I just love it. And I think it's also, like, especially like in that one, it also really conveys his sort of, I mean, Sam does feel superior to people. There is that kind of narcissism in him, and it really comes out in his humor, where, so I think it'd be very character building as well as,
And I think I think the humor in noir is one of the things that makes it so popular. The very sarcastic humor, the wit, and what John is suggesting here is so spot on, that this is how because the men in noir are not necessarily men of action.
Mhm.
They're very reactive, and they react sarcastically to danger. And that was part of its appeal. And I would even go so far as to say that Bogart character, and his wisecracking self was so influential that it crossed the Atlantic. And I think that you see it in the way Ian Fleming approached James Bond, that there would be those early James Bonds are pretty brutal and hardcore.
Yeah.
He's not as funny. But Fleming was very aware of American hard-boiled fiction. And I think the humor that he ended up putting into Bond was sort of inspired by that. And now, Bond always has a wisecrack. But the thing that's, when he's threatened, he responds with a wisecrack,
Yeah.
And, I love all that stuff. And one thing I'll add is that it bothers me when people take noir so seriously that when they watch a movie with an audience and the audience laughs, they assume the audience doesn't get it.
Yeah.
When in fact, so many of these films were funny and were meant to be funny. And the filmmakers knew what they were doing was humorous. It was funny, John points out Mitchum here, and it's just so obvious that Mitchum has that underlying strain of humor in so much of his noir performances, that he is letting it's kind of okay to laugh. He was very good at that.
Yeah, and I think that's also why he's so effective in Night of the Hunter. Is none of that part of him is there. That's a completely humorless person, and it makes him. And I just us talking about this, I realized I think that's part of why he's so intimidating too, is because he's just scary and dangerous, and there's there's humor in that film, but not with him.
And even I find that true even more so in Cape Fear.
Oh yeah.
He is really, really scary in Cape Fear.
Yeah, the scene where he picks up the girl is still
Barry Chase. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's still one of the most. And they didn't really show anything, but that's still in my mind. It's just so brutal, And you don't really see anything. I said you see the beginning and then the aftermath, but it's like you don't need to see anything. It's clear. Yeah.
Anyway, so John, that's John's observations were very good, and I completely agree with them that the humor in noir is a big part of what makes it so. Well, I was going to say popular, but I'll say palatable. It's what makes it palatable, because it's not just misery and oppression. You are kind of whistling past the graveyard in these films, and it's great. All right, last one, Ann. And
this is from Chuck. Let's revisit the ironic ending issue that came up before. There must be many wonderful ones worth discussing. Whoops, I flipped off the balcony and too late for tears.
Well, okay. Here's my thing about this question, and I'm assuming this is still our friend Chuck that we started with.
Yes, it's the same Chuck. We're beginning and ending with Chuck, Alpha and Omega.
Okay, Chuck. Number one, I'm a little hesitant to do this because not everybody has seen all these movies, so you're spoiling an ending when you say, "Oh, my favorite ironic ending," and if you haven't seen the movie, we've just spoiled it for you. But also, it's interesting because I forgive me for being a writer, but I'm thinking about what constitutes an ironic ending. Right. It's not a twist ending. It, and this ending that Chuck refers to in Too Late for Tears, which I apologize in advance. Turn off your screen right now if you haven't seen the movie, you don't want to know how it ends. But what's ironic about that ending is not that she flips off the balcony, it's that she trips over the suitcase full of money.
Yeah.
That she's struggled to keep. It's tripping over the suitcase of money that makes her fall over the balcony. So that's ironic. That's how she gets her comeuppance. I guess you could say that in some respects, Sunset Boulevard has a somewhat ironic ending, and the ending is also the beginning of the movie, because William Holden says, I always wanted a pool. Came out to Hollywood, wanted a big house and a pool, and then he gets it.
Yeah.
So that's kind of ironic. And I suppose you could say that the ending of The Killing has a certain degree of irony in it, that everything with the plan has been, down to the second, and then he buys a faulty suitcase.
Yeah.
And how interesting that I just cited 3 ironic endings that all have a suitcase in them. Because it just occurred to me that when William Holden leaves Norma's house, he's carrying a suitcase. He's carrying a suitcase. And then what happens, and then the suitcase falls by the poolside. But they all have a suitcase at the end.
Oh, another suitcase ironic ending is the one with Ellen Delon and
yes, and Jean Gabin.
Yeah.
Any number can win.
There's another suitcase ironic ending.
Yeah, oh man, I love that ending. And you're right.
So
it's all about the suitcase.
It is.
We're on to something. This is another category in the database.
There you go.
Is there a suitcase ending? Suitcase ending? That's pretty good. Oh. But it's I'm very intrigued by the use of the word ironic and just irony itself, because I wonder if it's not one of the most misused words in the language. When people, maybe they mean paradoxically or something, and they use ironic. I've always said, when people say, so what is irony? I say, well, irony is when there's a big earthquake and the priest goes into the church to pray for the lives of his parishioners, but the earthquake causes the huge crucifix to come off the wall and kill him.
Yeah.
Right? That's irony. Well, that to me is irony.
Yeah, and I was going to say The Twilight Zone. About 95% of the episodes of The Twilight Zone have an ironic ending.
Yeah,
that was
the ironic ending.
A Rod Serling trademark.
And those are so great, and they really, I think you see ironic endings more on The Twilight Zone or on Alfred Hitchcock Presents, than you see them in film noir.
In Suspense, the radio show, they were almost always ironic endings.
Yeah, and because in noir, it's more about, I mean, the ironic ending is sort of like the icing on the cake if you can make it work, but there's something about the inevitability of the ending, like this isn't going to turn out well, and it's not. I mean, and then you couldn't have an ironic ending. I mean, in noir, the ironic ending would be that they get away with it.
Yeah.
That somehow, despite everything, they actually kind of get away with it through some weird fluke.
Yeah.
Here's an ironic ending, I'm sure, and is Hollow Triumph, where, Paul Henry masquerades as this psychologist, and he's going to get away with the crime, but then he doesn't realize that the guy that he's masquerading as was wanted for something as well, and he's put the scar on the wrong side of his face. And I'm spoiling that whole movie now, but that was a very ironic ending as well. But,
or double indemnity. not double indemnity. Postman always rings twice. They need a postman always rings twice. Where he's prosecuted for the crime
For
he
the
didn't commit.
for the crime he did not
He'd
commit.
gotten away with
Right.
the other one earlier.
Right. Yeah, that's a good one. That's like the most famous one of all.
I know,
Why did we
I know.
not think
And
of
I
it?
don't think we came up with that the first time we went through this question either. Yeah. kind of the whole point of the story.
Yeah. Okay, but those are all good endings. And boy, if you want an ironic ending, a great twist ironic ending, watch Nine Queens. Nine Queens has a great finish to it. So
Yeah, I really want to. Yeah, because you actually gave me a DVD of it. That's how I saw it. And along with
okay.
Laura, and that was a great film. And I highly, highly recommend that film.
Yep.
They're
Okay,
both great.
very good. Very good.
Yeah. Hey, here we are.
Okay, we did that, and obviously we're dedicating this episode to Bill.
Yeah.
And next time, before too long, there might be some interesting announcements that I'll have to make about future festivals and things. Can't divulge too much right now, but when is this one going up?
October 14th. So it should really. It's the day before Noir City, DC starts.
Yeah, the day before Noir City, DC. So folks, come out. I will be there in DC or in Silver Spring, Maryland at the AFI Silver Theater Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. And there's a local bookstore that's going to be selling Dark City there, which I will be happily signing. And I think TCM, I'm not positive, but I think TCM may even be coming up to shoot a little something with the fans, kind of a fan focused thing about film noir. They don't need me so much, but they want the fans. So if you come to the festival, you may end up on TV. That'd be fun.
And the Foster Hirsch will also be there the following weekend. And he is, if you haven't read his book on film noir, The Dark Side of the Screen, I highly, highly recommend it. It's an excellent book. And also he's an extremely nice man. Yes,
Foster's the greatest. And also his book on neo-noir is excellent. It's one of the few that delves into neo-noir, and it's quite good. So, okay, Anne, we're going to be doing this again pretty soon, I think.
Yeah, should be the next 2 weeks.
Okay, very good. So keep your questions coming.
Please.
These were really good. This was fun. Oh. And so I will see you next time, Anne.
I will see you next time. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks.
Night.
And even Doll thanks you. Marjorie Doll, who has her head. There's her head right there. She thanks you too. Okay.
Sure. Okay.
Okay. Good night, everybody.
Good night.